Hey there, good morning. Welcome to the JeepSolid garage. So my 1994 Jeep Wrangler YJ, it's been running really rough. I've been doing some investigation into electrical, distributor cap, rotor, wires, plugs, all that kind of stuff. Got that all kind of narrowed down, was kind of zeroing in on it being a fuel issue, a fuel delivery issue, or bad fuel. I actually really thought it might be bad fuel because it started running rough pretty much right after I filled up one day. But the other day I was going out, gonna get some more gas in it, just to get some fresh gas in it and do a little more work on it. I was warming it up for a little while and this happened. Was just warming up the Jeep. I had actually rinsed it off, washed it earlier this morning, plenty of time for it to dry though. Then I noticed this and the drippage there, and it smells strongly of fuel. It is gas. So, there we go. Obviously a fuel delivery issue. So the fuel pump sits in the gas tank. It has a line going to the engine, to the fuel rail, pumps it in that way, but also a return line back to the tank. Clearly one of those finally broke bad enough to where it presented itself, making it very clear to me what was wrong. So thank you for that. So let's back it into the shop and take a look at it. See how it starts slow? Fuel delivery. Let's start by disconnecting the battery because we will be working around some electrical, the fuel pump, tail lights. We don't want to short something out. We've got the wheels chalked. And we are going to siphon out as much gas as we can because an extra 10 gallons of gas, 80 pounds, this is heavy enough without all that in there. So let's get as much out as we can. So I just popped the license plate off real quick, these two little screws right here. Next we're gonna disconnect the fuel inlet. So that's just these 6 little bolts here. There's a little plastic panel right here we're gonna remove to see that fill hose. Just gonna clean a lot of the dirt and debris out from up here because I don't want it falling all on me. And there we go, there's our fuel inlet right there. This other guy right here, that's our vent tube out of the gas tank. Now with those screws out, the inlet here will push in. Okay, now on the tank itself, along the skid plate, there's 4 bolts we're gonna take off. 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of down the line. But there's also 2 strap bolts. This guy here and that guy right down there. We're actually gonna leave those in place. Those hold the tank itself to the skid plate. You don't have to undo those 2 guys. Just these 4 bolts on the back side. And then on the other side of the tank, there's 3 bolts on this side. 1, 2, and 3. I'm gonna go along and break these guys loose. This is a 1/2 inch socket here. But there's a little trick. You wanna undo these evenly because what'll happen is the bolt here, this will start to spin independently or actually spin with the nut, so you won't be making any progress. So what you want to do is kind of go down the line, loosening them evenly, and then the weight of the gas tank here as it comes down, it'll provide just a little bit of resistance on the bolt there so that you can back these nuts off. So just do them a little bit at a time. And I have seen some people really struggle at getting these guys off. So sometimes you actually have to take like a screwdriver or something, get it back behind there, and kind of pull down on your plate here to give enough resistance to keep that bolt from spinning. I'm having pretty good luck so far, got just 1 more to go. Now before I remove that last bolt on the back side, I'm up here on the front side of the tank now. I got a 1/2 inch deep set socket here now. I'm gonna loosen these guys and get all three of these bolts out. We're actually, well, we're going to leave one nut in place until we can get a jack underneath the tank to catch it. And then we will take those last nuts off. And fortunately, these guys, you can get a 1/2-inch wrench on the back side of it, where that is something we couldn't do on the ones on the very back. Now I've got a nice transmission jack here to support the weight of the fuel tank, but if you have a just regular jack with a block of wood or something, that'll work. You just got to be careful that it's balanced. So with that in place, we can go ahead and remove these last two bolts. All right, with those last two bolts out, the tank is free. Well, mostly free. We're gonna lower down a bit, but we still have our fuel pump and vent hoses and stuff hooked up. So we're just gonna lower the jack here a little bit and bring this on down. And as we're lowering it down, make sure your fill and vent tube up here on your inlet aren't getting hung up on your frame there. On the passenger side, we're getting hung up on the exhaust, which I went ahead and took off one of the hangers to give me a little bit of room. But it is still not quite enough. I really didn't want to have to take the fill hose and vent tube off there, but I'm gonna have to try to get to those hose clamps down there and take those two guys off. I just don't see any other way around it. And of course it's very difficult to reach the bolts on these hose clamps, but we'll get it. A little tedious, but we'll get it done. Alright, we got both hose clamps off. Now we just gotta try to get these hoses off. Alright, we got the clamps off, the hoses are free so I can move around wherever I need to, but I am still running into an issue where I don't have quite enough room to get the tank out. The fill hose and vent hose are just kind of hanging me up on this side, and on this side the skid plate is just catching up on the exhaust. Theoretically, you're supposed to be able to leave that skid plate and tank together. You just leave those straps over the tank itself. I'm gonna go ahead and take these two strap bolts off and see if I can drop the skid plate and tank separately, because the tank needs to go that way a little bit, but the skid plate needs to go that way a little bit to drop down, and the tank needs to go that way. So I'm running into an issue of going back and forth. So let's take the skid plate off, see if that buys us just enough room. Alright, strap bolts are off. They popped out fairly easy. Let's see what that does for us here. Let's drop it down a little bit. Or a lot. I don't want that much. Yeah, that did the trick. Now let's try pushing the tank over to clear those hoses. And you do want to avoid using electric tools because you're working around gas and fumes, so we're trying to use hand tools. Okay, we've dropped the right side all the way down onto the ground, but before we go any farther, we're going to disconnect some things. Up here we've got our vent tube. We will disconnect that guy. We've got our electrical to our fuel pump. Up there is a wire loom. We'll disconnect that guy. And then back here on the fuel pump, we will disconnect our fuel line and return line. All right, everything should be totally disconnected. Let's drop it down. Alright, so there's our tank. We have our fill hose here and vent hose. And taking those hose clamps off, let me kind of move these and kind of get them where I needed to. These can be super hard to take off. Like honestly, if you're going to take these tubes all the way off, you might have to cut these. Last time I had to do that on another Jeep. They're just so stiff that you might have to cut them. I might need to replace those. On top of the tank here, we've got a vent there, and same thing on the other side. This one was so short, it just popped off on its own. That guy you guys saw me disconnect. Then we have our fuel supply hose and return, and our electrical to the fuel pump. And our ground right here. A lot of people end up with issues with their fuel pump because of the ground. So the ground is right there, and it's just like soldered on there. So we'll probably end up replacing the fuel pump. That'll be a good idea because it was a bit of a pain to get this out, but the reason I took it out because I was having a fuel leak, which I think was from the hose right here. Either my fuel supply or return hose. This guy here, let me zoom in on that. He's got some cracks in him. Some cracks in the line there. So I think that's where it was leaking. So I'm going to replace both of those lines.